Welcome to the Stories That Sparkle. I'm Hella Rader, and in today's episode, I have a chat with Caroline via Zoom. So we don't sit in my sunroom. I sit in the sunroom, but she's sitting in a different room in a different state altogether. And we'd have a conversation about creativity, being an actor, what is success, what's the difference between a want and a need, and really the art of balance. I count Caroline as one of my dearest friends. She's really been there for me and has helped me tremendously and walked through in various different ways my personal journey with owning my own creativity and stepping into what it is I do now, which is, among other things, this podcast. So I'm really grateful to her for so many different things and many, many mornings when she shared with me so freely about her journey and was very encouraging. Meanwhile, I am still on the road in the middle. I'm actually at the halfway mark of this driving tour around the country when I'm recording this intro. I'm still in Santa Fe. I'm looking out at the clear blue, big sky here in the high desert of the Southwest. And in northern New Mexico, it's gorgeous. It's been a really wonderful time here in Santa Fe. And by the time this episode comes out, I will actually be in Denver on my way almost to Lincoln, Nebraska. Woohoo! That's the brief update on where I am. And now I invite you to get comfortable, sit back, and listen in. I'm Hella Rader. With a good sense of humor, an open heart, and an open mind, I love to explore the very human complexities in others and in myself. That's why I created a space for women you have never heard of and could easily pass on the street to share in their own voices the intricacies of starting over in life, building community, inhabiting their bodies, and more. Welcome to our Disco Ball, the stories that sparkle. Well,
okay, so we're starting.
Yes, we're starting. Well, hi, Caroline.
Hello, Hella.
Thank you for joining me. You're not in the sunroom with me. I'm in the sunroom. You're in Connecticut.
Room. It's pouring rain today, which
it is?
It is. It's a very cold, rainy day, but it's good because it's like, when you have all these strings of warm days and you're outside, and then you have this cozy day to read your books and go inward, and all the plants get it'll be green again. So
yes.
That's good.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Well, thank you for joining me via Zoom to do this conversation. I really appreciate it.
It is so my pleasure. Anytime.
Yay. Well, I wanted to chat with you because you're a fabulous woman who does all the things, all sorts of things. And I could talk to you all day and all night about all of the different things. However, the thing I wanted to chit chat with you about, being an artist and being a creative and getting into acting and working as an actor. And that's something we've talked a lot about in general because this is a new territory for me later in life to actually embrace that piece of myself, the creative side of who I am, and actually do this whole project I'm working on right now with among the other things. So I really wanted to just hear what's your journey been like? Where did it start? How did it start? What happened? What is it all about?
When two people love each other. Where did it start? Well, I think a lot of artists will say it just started when I was born. And I have a feeling that is true for me. However, I tried to resist it. Every fiber of my being.
Really?
Yes, I grew up with a lot of artists, writers, painters, actors, directors. And one of them in particular, my father's best friend, Dame Janet Suzman, who's one of the Royal Shakespeare Company's greatest, she looked me in the eye when I was a little girl and she said, "Don't do it."
Oh my gosh.
It was a warning of sorts. And I actually heeded that advice for as long as I could. I went to college and I majored in political science with the idea that I would become a lawyer. I minored in Mandarin Chinese with the
that's
idea
right.
Yeah, I thought that would be useful. And now it's all gone out my head. Um, and during that time, and I was lucky that I went to a college that gave me a very good education, but also gave me the space to figure myself out. And finally, it was like I was going to burst. It was my junior spring, and I'd felt like I'd been going through the motions for someone else. I didn't feel like I was living my life. I felt like I was doing all of that to try to impress people and, you know, make my parents proud and be responsible and not give in to these little inklings of you're an actor, you're an actor, you're an actor. But I really actually had a voice in my head that would say that to me. And
Really? Like what was that like?
it was just that. It was so strange. It was just this little, the small, still voice inside. It really
Wow.
was there. And it all it said was, you're an actor, you're an actor, you're an actor.
Wow.
It
And you're
was,
like, please stop talking. Still
I know,
small
I
voice.
was like, I'm
Shh.
in Chinese class. Be quiet.
Right. You're not supposed to be doing this. You're distracting me right now. What is up with that?
Um, so yeah, my junior spring, I went to the head of the drama department, and it was, it was sort of like this coming out of my actor's closet. And I said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I want to be an actor, and could I get my drama major? Is that possible? She said, sure, come to my office. And I saw her in line at the snack bar, and I said that. And then she said, come to my office. And she was very kind, and she helped me get all the credits I needed last minute. A senior in college, still, grasping to get all the credits to get the major in time. And so I ended up double majoring and indeed graduating. I actually did do that. And then I was off, and then it was very amazing and exhilarating how stepping in and admitting it to myself shifted me and gave me a certain focus and a certain just aliveness that I had not been feeling. And the same thing happened when I was in New York after, well, I went to London to study, and then I came back, and it was my first year in the real world out of school. And I was in New York, and I call it the flailing fish years, because some people don't know what they're doing after they leave college. And especially as an artist, there's just no path, for a lot of occupations. You get an internship, and then you get some interviews, and you follow this ladder upward. And there is none of that as an actor. You just sort of kind of go, where do you audition? How do you know about them? And da, 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 da.
Did you find like a group of like others, like a community did it already exist, or did you have to build one? Like when you got to New York, like was there one you could just sort of wander into?
Oh, I wish. Gosh, that sounds fantastic. Well, not really. I was pretty isolated, but I did have some friends at Stella Adler that I really cherished. And one person in particular became my best friend. And he was this not yet out of the closet man from Texas. And um, he kind of discovered himself in Chelsea, New York, and so did I. And we were sort of inseparable, and
Aw.
kept navigating everything together, and having just, I say to my students now, just keep talking to your friends, because that's the way to learn in this business. Keep talking to your friends. And I even do that now. I mean, I had lunch with a friend of mine a couple months ago in the city. And I learned more in that hour than about just how the business was going and where everybody was and what we were doing. And it was very comforting to me, just having that conversation. So really, it's so important to have friends and to check in and see what's going on. But anyway, what I was saying before is that once again, I was sort of in New York and I didn't really feel like I clicked in there. And I was very, very scared to have dinner with my father and tell him that I wanted to give Los Angeles a try. And
Oh, yeah.
and to my father's credit, as he has always done things, he just kept saying yes. And so did my mother. I should give her a lot of credit too. But I said to my dad, I think I want to give Los Angeles a try. And he said, you should.
Well, but you come from a creative family.
Yes, my mother is a writer and a poet, but she just came out with her first book of fiction. And my father is a writer now, but he was an actor, and he made it to Broadway. And I love this. He was Franco Zeffirelli's script doctor
What?
in Los Angeles. I know he has the wildest stories. I wish he would write a memoir because he just has these incredible stories about being in the business that are really like gold. But
Right.
yeah, I had that influence growing up. I think my parents were wise enough to give my sister and I freedom towards our interests and tried their very best to hold back their judgments about things we were doing that they were like, oh boy, this is not going to go the right way. But yeah, they gave us a lot of support and freedom in our pursuits, and I'm grateful for that.
What was LA like?
Oh, I grew up in New England, and as a New England girl, I was so happy to be on the West Coast. Everything was different in all the right ways, you know. It was warmer, the people were friendlier, and the food was fresh and lots of fruit. And one of the first things I did, like the first maybe month I got there, I bought a red pickup truck. I dyed my hair blonde, which luckily did not last very long. And
Wow.
I got myself a red surfboard and I taught myself how to surf. And that was probably one of the greatest things I ever did for myself.
Aw. So
Yeah.
what was that experience like to like leave and like go not only to a new place, but also embarking on this whole life at this? I mean, you're doing two major things at the same time.
It was completely exhilarating. And I I had a couple of my happiest years out there when I moved there because I felt like all of a sudden I was giving myself ultimate freedom from the shackles of judgment and who I should be and what I should be doing with my life and how unimpressive I was at that time. And I think I freed myself of possibly self-doubt. Um, And I had gone through some really hard and sad, a little traumatizing times in London and New York, just personal relationships that were very challenging for anyone, but especially a young person. Um, and I think there was this sense of I'm leaving that all behind and I am going away from it. And I am living my life, not anyone else's. Um, and that was a great privilege to have that freedom. And I'll never forget that I still have a memory. I was driving up Topanga Canyon, of course, in my beat up old red truck, and I was listening to Colin Hay, and I just felt like I was the star of my own movie, my own leading lady, kind of my own
Aw,
hero
I love
for my,
that. I love
yeah.
that. That's kind of what this whole adventure driving across the country feels like to me, like, flash forward. I mean, I had those moments in my younger years, but for sure, I was still very much burdened with for a long time, what I should do, what's the safe thing to do, and then, or, slash do it for somebody else. So So to
Yeah.
do it, like to take that leap of faith, but not for someone else, for myself, was feels as much as a big deal. Like felt very significant. And now, I mean, we've been we do a lot of work together. Like twice a month, we get together and we do work together over FaceTime. And so you've seen my journey for the last year or so. You've been there in the mornings when I'm like, I can't even function. And that's why I wanted to, talk to you because you have been so instrumental and helpful to me with your perspective and sharing your journey and, being able to like help, just hold space for me when I was having the really scary, I can't do this, I'm terrified, there's no way moments. And so
It's real. It's definitely real. Um, yeah, I think I've been thinking recently, I don't know, I booked the tiniest role on Law and Order last year. I finally got my Law and Order stripes after 25 years in this business. And it just made me kind of reflect on if only everyone knew how hard the actors that they see on TV in the tiniest little roles, how much they've given to getting that. And then, if you get a role in theater, my goodness, theater is it's just there's just so much work behind and dedication, I should say, behind the product. And that's true for writing, and that's true for what you're doing, and that's true for a painting. I mean, when people, share their paintings that they've been working on, I saw somebody posted something like, I've been working on this painting for 4 years and I think it's getting close to done. And I was like, God, it's true. And that's what makes it great art. Um, but it can feel like a slog, but then you kind of lift your head up and go, wow, I'm so lucky that I get to do this for work.
So what has how has it changed this journey for you over time? Like, between, the early days, like, I don't know what I'm doing and going to LA and then at some point coming back from LA, right, to the East Coast. And I'm like, how has it evolved for you in terms of, what does it mean to be successful at it? What does that mean for you? You know?
Oh boy, that's a big question. And I think that's something we actors, at least, I'm sure other artists do too, talk about all the time. Because in this country, success is sort of seen as, are you famous? That has definitely I've had my own journey around that, having lived in Los Angeles. If I had it my way, I would love to be just recognized for my talent. That's kind of, I think, the best thing. Um, but even that has shifted for me recently, because I think for the last, I mean, my first 20 years in this business, it was just my sole purpose to succeed, whatever that meant. I didn't even know what it meant. I didn't even define it for myself, but I just wanted to do it. And I still want to do it. But what's nice is life is balancing out a little bit. I'll never forget my manager in LA. I think he saw how painful it was just going in for these huge projects. And he saw, you know, how painful it all was. The hope and then the loss, and then the hope and then the loss, and the getting so close to things. And just the fact that you're eating rejection for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, like how do you deal with I mean, how do you deal with that and keep going with it? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, yeah, he said, Caroline, we have another actor on our roster who has a family and some kids, and she's really focused on them, and she doesn't care if she books it or not. And I think about that. It's kind of takes up some space in the back of my head. I don't actively think about it, but it pops up in my brain every now and then, and I go, oh, I get it. I get it. It's really, really, really empowering and very nice to not need it, but to want it. And there's such a nice difference there. And one of my favorite teachers, and I'm going to do a little plug, because anyone pursuing any art should go to Jack Plotnick's website, Plotnik, and download his free ebook that he wrote for himself as he struggled with rejection and all the kind of heady hurdles that we feel in pursuing this. Because it's very isolating sometimes, and we think we're the only ones with the negative voices saying this and that and the other. And we think we're the only ones getting, paralyzed with nerves and all this stuff. And he wrote it for himself to kind of crack the codes, so that he could keep going. And then he puts it up there for anyone who wants to read it for free.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a really nice karmic gift that he offers up. And I refer back to it so often. I've encouraged every single person I know to read it. Um, but anyway, he talks a lot about not wanting to, I'm sorry, not needing the thing, but wanting the thing.
Right.
And even just saying that sort of relaxes me a little.
Yeah, it's a good it's been a sort of circulating, like I've had three, this will be the third different version of a conversation adjacent to this that I've had actually on for the podcast, which is this, I've arrived at a place pretty quickly, but I think because it's just a place in my life where I'm like, I don't really have a, I feel like I've already arrived at the destination I was trying to get to, which is what I'm doing right now. Like having this conversation with you and recording it and putting it, all of that, like even just having the conversation, even if it weren't
That's
being
so
recorded.
awesome. Yay for you. That's so
Yeah.
freaking
I
awesome.
mean, that's how I
Yay.
feel today. We'll talk about tomorrow. I don't know. Tomorrow might be not so like equanimity, whatever, have as much equanimity about it. But at the moment, like somehow I just feel very like I'm good. Like I don't really know that I have X, Y, or Z in mind for what's next. I know there's a few things I want, but I don't know that there's anything I need, which does make a difference. I hear that difference, and I too find it much more relaxing to want versus need. Hmm.
Yeah, and I also think the balance of that with the fire under our ass is really also very important because I mean, I hit a big block coming out of the pandemic where, we all hadn't worked forever, and I was sort of like, it's over. Oh my gosh, it's all gone. My 20 years of trying to do this and doing it is all gone. And I really went into a little bit of an existential crisis, I think. And I think I got out of that by remembering how much I just enjoy it. I just enjoy the work so much. And I also feel when I'm doing the work of it, of working on a script, a play, an audition, a film, a show, I feel like all these little things that I was born with, I get to finally use. And whether they're gifts or talents or just little fizzy things in my brain, I feel alive in a way that I don't feel with much else. There are other ways I feel very alive, but that is so rewarding. And um, that is now the thing that really ignites me to continue the pursuit, which is the hard work and the discipline and the dedication. Um, to get it done, whether it's having meetings, finding auditions, doing auditions, driving to callbacks. I have to drive, I think, 5 to 6 hours next week for a 10-minute callback.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, it's the hustle. It's
I mean, but that is my choice. Nobody's twisting my arm.
right.
And there's something nice about that. But I will say, I mean, it's where I am right now is really lovely. And finally, I kind of feel like, wow, I'm doing what I love. Well, that's kind of great that it turned out this way. And it
Aw.
took me 25 years at least to feel some contentment. And yes, next week I will rant and rage about how discontented I am about my career right now. But there is a sense of like, oh, okay, that this is where it's added up to at this point. And I'm grateful for all that hard work. And really, it's less like hard work at my desk memorizing my lines. And to me, the hard work, at least of being an actor, and I have a feeling other artists would feel this way too, is the waiting, is the staying sane when you don't have a project, when your agent isn't calling you, and when you don't know what to do with yourself. I find that to be the hardest time. And I usually, at this point, when a big production ends, I usually weep because I know that the hardest part of my job is around the corner, which is being unemployed as an actor.
Right.
um,
Right.
I don't think the hardest work of being an actor is being employed, waiting for the first rehearsal, getting geared up, learning your lines, and then going to rehearsal and getting to play with actors for hours every day and then having an audience. I think that's why we do it.
Right. That's the
Uh,
fun part. Yeah.
it makes me sad when people lose sight of the fact that we are all there to tell the story and serve the script. And I've experienced that a lot where things get either personal or political, and we lose sight of the goal of making good art. Um,
Right, because at the end of the day, it's a function of, or it's a piece of the storytelling, and telling a human story.
my friend John Cariani, who's a wonderful actor and really renowned playwright, he was so comforting. He always gives me pretty great advice. And he's also the reason I got my equity card
Oh,
long ago. Yeah. He told them to cast me in his show. And that's how I got it. But anyway, he said to me, he said, Caroline, sometimes it's not a party and sometimes it's um, the cast are not your best friends. Sometimes it's just a job.
right.
And that has been a fantastic, I mean, obviously so simple, but a wonderful thing to keep in mind because sometimes it's just a job. Sometimes you just go and you go to work and you pay your bills and you do the best you can.
Yeah.
And you obviously apply your creativity and your training, but sometimes it's not fun. He actually did um, Caroline or Change on Broadway during the pandemic, and they were
Wow.
all in masks until they set foot on the stage. And the moment they got off stage, it was masks on, go to your individual dressing rooms and don't speak and be a part. And they were the only Broadway show that never had to cancel one single show, but nobody really, I mean, I'm sure they bonded over time, but it was not fun. They weren't hanging out in the green room, which is always really fun. So sometimes it's just a job,
Mm,
and that's, I think, really good for us creatives to go, oh yeah, like we could be at a cubicle working for a boss and checking in and working at our computers. So let's get to work and get moving.
yeah. I think it's like any job. Like if your heart's not in it, it's awful, really.
That's
So,
kind of what it felt like in college, where I was learning great things, but my heart was not in it. And
right.
I'm lucky that I found that, but it doesn't necessarily make it easier. It just makes it feel like you're wearing your own clothes.
Ooh. Oh, I like that.
I would also say, like, I mean, if there are people listening who are pursuing art or their own interests or their creativity, I think it's really important to acknowledge that almost everyone I know has another job,
Right.
to pay bills, or were working in corporate and then had savings and then are doing their creative pursuits now.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think there's so much talk about like live your dream and jump off the cliff and all of that. And it's also really important to say have enough somewhere to pay your bills so that you can stay in that space. If I don't need it, I want it.
Right.
Um, you don't have desperation. And if if anybody out there is listening and doesn't know what a fuck you fund is,
Wow. Yeah. What's that? I want to hear about this.
you know what a fuck you fund is?
No, I've never heard this term.
Oh, yeah, it was introduced to me when I was a bit younger, but I think it's just really important, which is to, the example is an actor who's also a waitress has enough in her savings, and we're talking like a few thousand, so that if her boss is harassing her or she's in a horrible work situation, she can say, fuck you, and leave
Oh. Oh.
and financially okay. Don't get into debt. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And work your ass off somewhere to have enough that you're okay. And that's really important. And I do that every single day. And while I'm, waxing poetic about being an actor and all my hard work auditioning and blah, 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 I'm not going to lie. I teach yoga 3 to 4 hours a day, so that I'm in a nice space of being able to show up as a professional. When I get offered a job, I'm not like, okay, sure, yeah, whatever. I'm like, okay, great. Thank you so much. Could you tell me about your housing? Because
Mm-hmm.
I've too often, I mean, I used to just jump. You need to, ask the questions where you are, but you're
Right.
taking care of yourself.
Right.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to do your best work. So it's nice to kind of be in a place of like, oh yeah, I have an agent. Please let them know, have them read the contract. That's such a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what they're
So, what's that balance like for you? I mean, because yes, I mean, I was actually talking about this with someone else. She's a film director. She's also a writer and an actor, and she hasn't. But we were talking about how even if you're working in an office job, you can still have creative outlets. Like it's not all or nothing. Either way, you're in the mix. Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Yeah.
absolutely. And I am a huge fan of the stories of artists at whatever level of success who were scrappy and had to wake up at 5 to write for an hour before they took their kids to school and went to their job. I love those stories. You have to have the bandwidth and the energy to pursue your art after you've spent your bandwidth and energy paying your bills.
Right.
And so I don't know, I hand it to anybody and everybody. It's all scary and it is all challenging. I subscribe to something called the Writer's Almanac, and I get it in my email every morning. And it's just a little page that comes in with a poem, great poems, and then little tiny paragraphs about people from history and mostly writers and their stories. And I've listened to it, I think, every morning for the last maybe 15 years or something.
Aw.
An impression. But there are so many of those stories of the person who just had to do the thing. And they did it and they did it and they did it and they didn't have any success. And everybody said no and they were rejected everywhere. But they kept doing it because they had to, because their soul was ignited by it. And it didn't matter if they were, you know, published or movie stars or put in a museum. They just did it. And those are the ones that are usually the success stories at the end of the day. And it's just a wonderful story of pursuit and staying true to your art. And I think you asked a question way earlier in this conversation about how my understanding of success has shifted. And I think my husband, he's one of my favorite success stories in the whole wide world. And I think it's one of the many reasons I love him. Music was not in his background, and his soul clicked with it. And he was lucky because throughout his life, teachers saw that and they believed in him and they took him under their wing. And now he has a doctorate in the hardest instrument, one of them in the world, and is doing so well. And he's worked really, really hard for it.
What is that like? I mean, there's two of you, two artists, like true artists in one home, and a bunch of animals. But
Yeah, including us. Yeah.
right, there's a bunch of animals living in that house, pretty
There's
much.
six animals,
There's 6 animals
two
there.
cats, two dogs, and two humans. Yes.
Yeah, what is that? I mean, what's it like to like live with a fellow artist? Even, I mean, you do different things. Obviously, you're not a violinist, but still, like, what's that like?
It's really been helpful to live with a performer who is not an actor. It's cool to compare notes with him. It's really comforting when he's like, wow, I thought music was hard. Your industry is nuts. And he mourns when I lose out on a role. And I mourn when he misses out on a position that he's been training for. Also, just being with somebody who understands the fluidity that's needed to be a performer or an artist. That, you know, at one point we'll have plans to go on a trip and then I'll have to cancel them because I'll get a role. Or he was such a saint that time I got a call and they said, can you be here in a week and start rehearsal and miss Christmas and miss New Year's because you're coming to California? And that was a hard decision. We were just engaged, and I left him here in the middle of a very intense winter with all the animals.
Wow.
He rallied, and I'm very grateful. And then I do the same. You know, he'll have these very intense symphony weeks where he's working from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. and driving 4 hours every night. And I'll hold down the fort because I'll be here. So what's wonderful about him is we really do dance well.
Oh,
We're very,
I just love that. I love that way of expressing it. I think that's a really beautiful way to
it
put
really
that.
does feel like we're in a flow. And I never had that with anybody. I think that's really important. I mean, I've lived with or shared space with people where it wasn't because of anything except it just didn't work. And it's hard enough juggling the scheduling of being a artist or an artist, but also just self-employed. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stigmas, and it's a little bit limiting, but that's another sort of just thing you've got to overcome.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, like
but I
define it
think,
for yourself, basically. Like not judge yourself or judge
yeah,
you in it, and then also define, to your point, what success is for you, for
yeah, and I
yourself.
also think back to your other point where you just were like, I'm alive, and I just feel like a lot of people who listen to that small still voice in their body and their brain that's like, I want to do this, and they do it. They know, they are all very clear that life is short and we
Yes.
only get, and we
No, I
don't know
mean,
when it's gonna end.
listen, it started. It's when my dad passed away, I stopped living. So there's that. But I was young. But between my mom dying, my marriage ending, and then my mentor dying, and everything in between, I'm like, yeah, life really is very fragile. It's very short. There's no guarantees. And I, had this moment, it was 2021, where I was like, just overcome by this ginormous wave of regret of all the things I didn't do. So I had to grieve the things I
Yeah,
didn't do at a different time in my life when I, quote unquote, it would have been easier to do and less risky, and I wasn't older and blah 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 blah. I mean, I don't have children. That does make it somewhat easier in terms of I'm not responsible for anyone in that sense, and no one's depending on me in that kind of way. But it was this big wave that just crashed down on my head and almost crushed me. It was in that moment that I had to make a choice, or I didn't have to. I made a choice. A woman said to me, I called her, I was like, well,
mm,
and she said, just write every day. And I'm like, about what? She's like, doesn't matter. When you get home from work, take 10 minutes. The first thing you do, sit down and write anything, whatever. Doesn't matter. And then do it again tomorrow and do it again the next day and and that this was well before I was even thinking. It wasn't a book at this point. It was just write something, like just that to you, what you're saying, like just write something to start writing.
That's so wonderful. And sometimes we don't even get that memo in our lifetime. And some people get it really early and some people get it late. Um, and all of that is great. I mean, I do think that your journey happened, for lack of a better term, for a reason. That you started at this time in your life versus
Oh
earlier.
yeah, I couldn't have done
I
this. Yeah.
also had, I mean, my goodness, I think it was just like a couple of years ago, I sunk into some pretty solid depression about what you said, except that I'd done it and I hadn't turned out the way I was hoping. Um, and that realization was a hard thing to swallow. And that I actually made a short film about it now that I think about it. And that, I went out there and I was brave and I did rip the band-aid off and I did live hand to mouth, living in fear of how am I going to survive while pursuing this. And I think there's also the American tale of like, if you go out and do that, you'll be a huge success. And I think that chapter of mourning that I wasn't, I'm not a household name. I mean, my goodness, the things I'm going out for, I didn't think it would be like this at this time. But it got me grounded and and that experience and pulling myself out of it got me to appreciate what I had done and forced me because if I didn't love myself, I was just going to stay in that hole and appreciate the little things, get very present, realize that success in my business was not everything. Value simple things like my health, and another day. And I mean, I guess my yoga practice, and I had a friend who said, being an actor will turn you into a Buddhist faster than anything. And I guess everything I'm saying is very Buddhist, be
Well, I
here
mean,
now.
right. Well, yeah, I'm curious, like, how does your yoga practice? I mean, because you do a lot of that and you work with others and I mean, you do a lot for others. I just have to say, like, as being, as a recipient of your care, if how I would put it, your care, and time, like you really are very present and you have helped me a great deal inhabit my physical self, my body, which has been a whole other journey, as parallel to all the things. I mean, that was intertwined. This inhabiting of bodies part is certainly intertwined. I'm curious, like you know, choosing that as sort of the parallel that of what work that you do, which is to teach yoga and to work with other people one on one or as a class. Like what where what I don't know. Just I'm curious about that.
Yoga is a weirdly mystical thing that found me. And I'll be honest with you, I still don't think of myself as a yoga teacher or yoga instructor. I really don't. I always think of myself as this person who found this thing and really liked going to yoga classes and really likes sharing it because that's how it all started. I was a runner. I ran about 9 miles a day, a little psychotic in high school. I was on the track team and the cross country team, and that was my thing. And then randomly, I was bored at home one summer, and my dad said, "Do you want to go to this class, this thing called yoga?" And I went. I was very, very uncomfortable the whole time. I was sweating. I had tears coming out of my eyes just because every pose was so painful. I kept feeling like, when is this over? When is this going to be over? I want to get to the next thing, which is such a mindset that I was in, with the running and the getting to the next thing all the time. And when I left that class, I thought, oh, I'm so glad that's over. But I know something good happened there and I should go back. And then I just kept going back and going back and
Wow.
going back. And there were a couple of years where I would just do it once a week. I probably should have a major in dance because when I was at Vassar, I was not a very social creature. And I just did my studies and I did a lot of volunteering that I didn't want any credit for. You know, you could get credit if you delivered food to the homeless, and I felt like that was cheating. And then I did a ton of dance classes. I mean, like 2 or 3 hours a day. So at that time, I was just doing yoga about once a week. But I think my dance background actually really informed my yoga practice. And then, I mean, I did a ton of yoga in New York. That actually, I was certified only because I was curious about it. I did not want to become a yoga teacher. I did not have that in my eyes. But I was pretty traumatized from an early relationship that I had. And the only place I felt safe, and that was a scary one, was my yoga mat. And it
Wow.
wasn't even with friends or family, it was my yoga mat. And it was this little, I call them sacred rectangles. You know, you're standing on your yoga mat, and it's just you and you. And there was something about that. I would walk, 20, 30 blocks to this yoga studio that's sadly not no longer there, every single morning, just to feel that sense of I'm okay here. I'm surrounded by pretty lovely people, and I'm in a safe space, and I can do whatever I need to do on this mat. And I also felt like I was physically moving through the processing of the trauma. And that was very, very important to me
Hmm.
now that I'm reflecting on it.
It's interesting you say that because I think that's what I would say um, you carry is this ability to help someone embody. So maybe it's less about because we don't do like straight up this or that when we work together on things. Like we don't. It's not like it's always different, but it's always about embodiment and being dropping into the body. And so I guess like I don't know to I don't think of you now that I we're talking about, I don't think of you either as a yoga instructor or a yoga teacher or a yoga this. I just think of you as a very embodied woman who has the capacity to help others embody themselves. So there you
Can
go.
we do a podcast every day? Because this is the nice
Yeah.
confidence boost. You're so kind. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm just a person who has been through some stuff. And I think yoga and acting and dance and creative expression were the tools I had to navigate through it. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's what it is. And I really, really like sharing those things. I grew up with someone in my family that was diagnosed with a disease, and now that I've done a lot of therapy, I have a feeling that because I loved her so deeply. I love her so deeply. But because I couldn't fix her or help her or make it better or cure it, um, and it was when I was very young, so was she. I think that has stayed with me forever, and there's it's a different kind of satisfaction than I talked about before. I was talking about that feeling of working as an actor. It's a very different but wonderful feeling of satisfaction when somebody simply feels better because of whatever I may have shared. And I would never say it was because of me, because it was just all stuff I learned along the way from others. And I really think teaching is just sharing the knowledge. And it's taken a long time to come to a place of being like, okay, exercise and diet are really important for our health, but like anything, they can become an addiction or an imbalance, and then we have some problems. So I think that may be why I like trying to, when I work with people and myself, I try to really listen and feel into what do I need today? Am I feeling heavy and lazy? And do I need to push myself? Or am I feeling exhausted because I have been pushing myself? And do I need to balance that? And I think that's like, if I'm going to talk about like all the lessons I've learned as a yogi, like the tippity top one that I like to talk about is balance. I think I said this to you this morning.
Yes, I think you
Uh,
did. Yeah.
the body needs balance. And that changed me, I think, because I was so out of balance with overdoing everything that I started to realize what I was doing was throwing my body off balance over and over and over again. And then it had to work harder to find the balance,
Mm,
right? And so what I could do is, yes, I could keep exercising and, eating well, um, whatever that means to any individual, and doing this and that, but in a balanced way instead of in an extreme way. And the extremism was the thing that was throwing me off of balance, which was creating stress in my body and everybody else's body, which I think our culture so often labels as you're successful, you work really, really hard. And I think it's a really worthwhile message to share, which is you should work hard. You should be disciplined. You should have structure. You should be smart about drugs and alcohol and diet and exercise and sleep and care and friendships and all that and volunteering. Let's not forget selflessness, but not in this extreme way that throws us off. And usually we're acting from our ego if we're in
right.
extremism, right?
Mm.
It's very humbling balancing yourself out. So anyway, I really recommend that if you're only eating cake, eat some broccoli. And if you're only eating broccoli and salad, eat some cake.
It's fantastic. I think you're right. I mean, the balance is so important. That's what I've heard in this conversation is this balance. Like, yes, there's some real, there are real struggle. There's real struggle. There's real desire for certain things. And also there's a balance that you've achieved that I hear between the needs and the wants and the success being a balanced thing as well, and understanding it's a bigger term than what we commonly maybe ascribe to it. So, yeah, I love this like
I'll share
balance.
a little thing that is in the back of my head sometimes. Another thing back in there. I had a headshot photographer once say to me, she was describing her very lovely life of being married to a musician. This was a long time ago. And she lived in, I think, Hoboken, and she had this lovely headshot business. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, I'm really content. And it's not even happiness, it's contentedness. And I would take, she said this to me, she said, I would take contentedness over happiness any day. And I was like, whoa, what? And I think about it a lot on days that I feel really content. Um, I love happiness. That's great. Um, but there is a balance there too. And I think that it makes everything sweeter as well if you have your successes and your happy days, um, when it blossoms out of this balanced, content life where you're not only relying on happiness from your job, and you're not only relying on happiness from your partner or from yourself or from all the things you buy, right? That there's this, it comes from different sources. And one thing I always try to say to anybody who will listen, especially myself, is I now believe that the best way to feel content and happy is a practice of gratitude. And one of the best, absolute best ways to have that snap into your life immediately is volunteering and community service and doing things selflessly. It is such a, oh, I could speak about this forever and I won't. But trust me when I say, if you're feeling blue, just get on your computer and Google something you're interested in. There is a pantry where you can help feed the homeless. There is a animal sanctuary where you can help clean things and walk dogs. There are women's centers where you can help there. You can volunteer your talents and time somewhere. You can go to different countries and teach things that you know. You can do that here, or even just to the city that you live near. But boy, would it be wonderful if everybody prioritized just a little bit of that practice. And I know we're all busy and we're all tired. But that right there will change your life so quickly. And I really believe in that.
Agree.
Mhm.
I have one last question. If you had to tell like a young person who wants to get into the arts, specifically acting, what is the number one thing, like just the one, if they do nothing else, what is the one thing you would recommend based on just your experience? Like, do this one thing.
I don't know. Right now in my mind is have friends,
Oh, yes, community.
community. Um, Even if your friends aren't in your business, have have your people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so nurturing and keeps you grounded, keeps you humble, keeps you hopeful, keeps you learning. You learn from your friends when you have long conversations, when you don't look at your phones, but you look at each other and you listen.
Yeah.
I guess just listen, listen. That's the advice. Listen.
Okay. I like it. Well, thank you, Caroline. I appreciate this.
It's an honor to be here and talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Stories That Sparkle, a space I created for women to share in their own voices the intricacies of their stories. And of course, a huge, ginormous thank you to Caroline. So grateful to her for joining me to have this conversation about her journey with defining success for herself, with being an actor, the struggles, the ups, the downs, the lessons she's learned, and also this whole idea of the art of balance. I really do. I take that with me a lot, actually, and I'm really grateful for that reminder today, especially as I prepare to embark on the second leg of this driving tour. So I will have all the links to Caroline's work and how you can get in touch with her in the show notes, as well as her Instagram handle. So please do check her out. You will not regret working with her. She's incredible. If you are enjoying the Stories That Sparkle, I would just ask for a little teeny teensy favor. Please pass this podcast on to 2 friends, just 2, and help me get the word out about these amazing, incredible, fantastic, magical women and all of these amazing stories that they're sharing with us. And if you have a story to share or a topic you'd like me to cover in an episode of the podcast, please do send me a note, hellarader@substack.com, because together we bring light into dark places.